So hello everyone, welcome to another UX Writing Hub event. Today we have a very fascinating topic about content and artificial intelligence. I'm personally super interested in this. Clearly AI writing tools are becoming more and more sophisticated and more helpful, but it can be really hard to kind of figure out how to use them, to make sure that we benefit in our work. And that's why I'm super happy to have Lisa Young here from Twitter, who will share exactly this, how they started using AI in her content design team. And I will hand it over to Lisa in a minute. Just a few things before we start. You can absolutely use the chat to comment and discuss things between you during the talk. However, if you have questions for Lisa, it's much better if you use the dedicated question and answer section. You see it on the bottom of your screen. That way they won't get lost. I will try to keep track of any questions that come up in the chat as well, but we'll have question and answer session at the end of the talk. So just to make that clear. The recording will be sent out to everyone who has registered. And Lisa has also kindly agreed to include her slides. So you'll get that in a few days. And that's pretty much it. Just to mention, the webinar is brought to you by the UX Writing Hub. If you're not familiar with us, you find a lot of information on our website, uxwritinghub.com. Loads of resources for new, future, and existing UX writers, content designers, and other writers in tech, including a free course if you're thinking about transitioning to this field. So that's it for me. I will hand over to Lisa. Welcome, and thank you so much for coming today.
Oh my gosh, Anya, thank you so much for having me, and thank you everyone for coming today. I'm so glad you joined this call. Today, I'll talk about how words affect action and how well-designed words affect positive behavior change and connect the world. We know this because at Twitter, we have world-class research and data science teams. So we have both the qualitative and the quantitative data to back this up. But for everyone's voice to be in the conversation, we need a safe and welcoming environment, a place for curiosity to thrive and conversations to flow. So as content designers speaking to people from within the platform, how do we choose the right words and craft the right tones and then automate and enforce that strategy at scale? So enter the role of AI in content design. And let's see here if I can advance the slides. Yes. So in this session, I'll start by telling you a little bit about my career journey to content design. And then I'll tell you about Twitter's vision and values and how content design has become more and more important in supporting those values in ethical, respectful ways. Then I'll cover what we mean by health at Twitter, including how we're connecting with the people on the platform in new and innovative ways to encourage them to align their actions and their intent. And after that, I'll tell 3 stories that showcase how the words we use when speaking to people from within the platform are helping us affect positive behavior change. And then I'll dive into the role of AI in Twitter's content design practice, including how it's helping us achieve consistent standards and healthy conversations at scale. And then we should have plenty of time to wrap up with Q&A. But first, hello. I'm Lisa Jennings Young, and I'm really happy to be here today. My pronouns are she, her, and I lead the content design team for health at Twitter. For those of us who might be low vision or blind, I'm a white person with blonde hair, and I'm wearing an ivory blouse. I'm giving this presentation from my home office in Oakland, where it's a very sunny morning, so I've closed the blinds to help with the backlighting. I hope the lighting is okay. So I know some of you are considering whether a career in content design is right for you, or just maybe you're just starting your career in content design. So I wanted to share my journey with you to kick things off. As you can see, it wasn't a straight line. I started my career as a technical writer, first as an IC and then as a manager. And it was many years after doing content design within my role as a principal technical writer that I got my very first official role on a design team as a product content strategist. When I first started in tech writing, it was back when we published user manuals for every single product we developed. Then when the web came along, we moved everything into PDFs. We had no way of knowing if anyone found those manuals helpful, let alone used them. So at that point, I discovered that I wanted to do something different than build products that needed lots of documentation. I wanted to build products that didn't need any documentation. And that's when I discovered this thing called content strategy by way of Christina Halverson's book, Content Strategy for the Web. And I felt like the sun burst through the clouds. And that's what I've really been doing ever since, focusing on various types of content strategy, from enterprise to marketing, and finally service design as well, and then to product content design. So enough about me. Now let's talk about Twitter. Let's start with the big picture. Twitter's vision is to be the place where everybody joins the global conversation on their own terms. So Twitter was founded on the values of human rights, digital civil liberties, and the public conversation. So if Twitter is the place where everyone joins that global conversation, we have an outsized role or outsized responsibility and outsized responsibility when that public conversation gets sticky. As a result, content design has become more and more critical to supporting these values in ethical, respectful ways. So when the content design team does our job right, we help promote healthy conversation, promote healthy and safe conversations where everyone can join on their own terms. So Twitter is about free expression. Our founders strongly believed in it, the idea that everyone, everywhere deserves to be heard. So let me give you an example. The Arab Spring uprisings, the citizen-led grassroots movement that began in Egypt around 2010, used Twitter as their primary communication method. This showed what a valuable platform Twitter can be for amplifying historically excluded voices. But it also showed that there are trade-offs between safety, privacy, and free speech. So we work every day to strike the right balance between them. Of course, we don't always get it right, but at our best, we protect people from harm by empowering them to make informed decisions about the content that they see. So while Twitter's been a driving force behind some of the most prominent social movements of the past decade, including Me Too and Black Lives Matter, it's also been a breeding ground for some of the worst online behaviors. Our focus on health initiatives has a pretty basic rationale. Twitter simply believes that it's the right thing to do for the people who use our platform, for our business, and perhaps most importantly, for society at large. Because creating that safe and welcoming environment is ultimately a human problem, it's not a tech problem, the content design team thinks a lot about, we call meeting people where they are. That means thinking beyond the words to understand what people likely feel when they see those words. We do this by balancing free expression with safety and privacy through product mechanics. And as content designers, we also do this through the way we speak to people from within the platform to connect with them in new and innovative ways and encourage them to align their motivation with their intent and overall drive better communications. As content designers, we aren't in the business of creating interfaces. We're in the business of designing memories. So we ask ourselves, long after the experience has passed, what's the memory we want to remain? So what actually goes into making healthier Twitter? Well, there's lots of things. But before we get into that, we got to get real. Recent reports show that Twitter has 238 million active daily users worldwide. As you can imagine, we have many challenges in building inclusive products that keep people safe. Let's hear what Trevor Noah has to say about this challenge. So if you hear an echo, please drop a note in the chat so Anya can try to fix it. Otherwise, it's about a 2-minute video, so just bear with us.
the site that owes $30 billion in meme royalties to Denzel Washington. Now, I love Twitter as much as anyone, but one of the worst things about it is how absolutely any post can turn into a nasty fight. I mean, you could type, "I love my mom," and then you get 10 replies telling you to go kill yourself. And one of them is from your mom. Well, now, Twitter is trying to make things a little more civil.
Thank you, Trevor. So clearly, some people don't trust us. Some people even say they're harassed, that our safety tools are insufficient, or our enforcement is unfair and inconsistent. And others say we censor their speech. And here's the thing, sometimes they're right. And after examining a decade of tweets in 2018, MIT found that false misinformation spreads 6 times faster than accurate information on the platform. And worse yet, misinformation is 70% more likely to be retweeted. Let me stop there because I think this is important and I want to repeat it. False information spreads 6 times faster than accurate info, and misinfo is 70% more likely to be retweeted. And then on the other hand, tweets that break the Twitter rules account for less than 0.1% of all tweet impressions. That's a tiny, tiny percentage, but it has a massive impact on the platform. So in order to stop their spread, we only have a few hours from the time those tweets are published to act on them before they rack up fully half of their impressions. So let me say that again. We only have a few hours to act on rule-breaking tweets before they rack up half of their expected impressions. So we're in a race against time every single day to minimize potentially traumatizing experiences around things such as targeted harassment, hate speech, and misinfo. So our job is to mitigate exposure to those unhealthy conversations and find new ways for people to navigate around them. So now I'll jump into the next section of the presentation and talk about what we mean by health at Twitter. So at Twitter, health isn't about how many steps you've taken or your resting heart rate. However, it certainly can be about things that raise our blood pressure. And we see them on Twitter daily. So it's the health team's job to help people use the platform in a way that's safe for them. Last year, when Twitter started thinking about the future of health on the platform, the health content design team also thought about the best way to clearly define our role. So to focus our efforts, we wrote our own internal vision statement, which is to set the global example for how social media can be more inclusive, accountable, and equitable for everyone. We realize our vision will always be a work in progress. Why? There'll always be people that try to exploit the loopholes. There'll always be new ways that people want to express themselves, to participate on the platform. And there'll always be more we can do to provide each person with that magical experience that feels just right to them. So with that vision in mind, it was time for the content design team to define our mission, which is to encourage healthy conversations, amplify credible voices, and provide a safe space for people of all identities, especially those from historically excluded communities. When people see the words, they don't know, nor do they care who wrote them. It's not about us. It's about Twitter seamlessly encouraging those healthy conversations. So the content design team also defined our job, which is to provide useful, usable, and effective content that responds to people's needs. We do this by collaborating with our cross-functional partners at the earliest phase of a project, so that the words we write actually inform the design rather than just filling up the space. So after defining our vision, our mission, and our job, we defined our mandate, which is reducing the impact of known harms and promoting healthy conversations so that people feel safe to express ideas freely. So now let's jump into the next section where I'll walk you through 3 stories that illustrate how we put these ideas into practice. So I've got a lot of screenshots, which I've heard are hard to read when I present through Google Meet. So hopefully they're clearer on Zoom, but I'll try to read the copy in case you can't see it. And Anya, as she said at the beginning, is going to make the slides available after the presentation. My first story is about the redesign of our misinformation labels. So the redesign was intended to improve scannability, discoverability, and craft. For this project, we set out to find language that was clear, specific, and relevant. So on the top of the screen, you can see that our old misleading label design had become really bloated over time. Because of the parameters of the old design, we had to write one sentence that did all the things: warn, give the context, and provide a CTA to the debunking information. In addition, the content was unstructured and it could be any length or complexity. So writing, reviewing, and localizing it was really time consuming. So now look at the new label design. It's a big difference. Each label is structured with a heading that indicates severity, body copy that gives context, and a standalone CTA to encourage clicking to the debunking info. So it's a better experience for the readers, but it also helps us work faster and more effectively. To select the most effective term for the new headings that go with the tweets having a significant risk of harm, it's important for Twitter to stand for what we believe in. So we wanted to go with a confident, even opinionated tone. We conducted unmoderated research with half the group self-identifying as conservative and the other half self-identifying as liberal. We asked people how they felt when they saw these following three terms: disputed, get the facts, and misleading. So here's what we learned. Disputed is unclear. Everyone responded negatively. What's being disputed? Who's disputing it? And if it's disputed, shouldn't there be two sides represented? Get the facts angered some people and enforced the perception that Twitter is biased against them. In addition, there were concerns about fact checkers and vaccine research being funded by vaccine manufacturers, and this undermined our credibility. Misleading was clear to everyone and was the top choice. So this is what we went with for the new label design that you'll see on Twitter today. We got the words right, but finding them was a manual, time-consuming process. My second story is about an article nudge intended to encourage people to read before they retweet to slow the spread of misinformation. So I want you to check out what's written here. Headlines don't tell the full story. You can read the article on Twitter before retweeting. So the fascinating thing we learned from this copy approach is that the tone can change depending on the voice in your head. So I'll tell you the story. Let's go back a few years before the US 2020 elections. We wanted to reduce the spread of misinfo. So we designed our first nudge to get people to read articles before sharing them. We wanted to get people to put a little space between their reaction and their action. We thought the headline was clever and twittery. The initial quantitative experiments were really successful, and everyone on the team was very excited for the global launch. Yes, many people loved it, but we quickly learned that some people absolutely hated it. In this case that you see here, the House Judiciary GOP account. In that fraught environment just prior to the elections, it came off as accusatory or shaming. It's all about tone. The copy either comes off as a polite suggestion or a hard put down. Is it your loving aunt or your worst frenemy? So we learned a lesson. We needed a tone that was inclusive, not clever. We needed a headline where the tone didn't change with the voice in your head. So for the next iteration, which has been in production globally since May 2020, we used a tone intended to be much more inclusive. Want to read the article first? You're about to share an article you haven't read on Twitter. In quantitative research, the previous more clever tone performed about the same as this tone. But what quantitative research missed is that for some people, the perceived negative tone reinforced their perception that Twitter's biased against them. So the previous heading was declarative, and this one is an invitation, which shifts the responsibility to the reader. The new approach exceeded our expectations and has reduced sharing without tweeting by about 40%. That's huge. As I like to say, when you're at the center, everything is magnified 1,000 times, and the words can have an outsized impact. But again, this took a lot of time and effort to find just the right words. So my third and last story is about a harmful reply nudge. Research shows that a significant portion of harmful interactions on Twitter come from people who don't have a history of posting offensive content. This really surprised me. In fact, 85% of harmful content come from people who are being harmful for the very first time, with about 90% of those people deleting their tweet within a day. So I'm going to hit a hard pause here because this is super important. 85% of offensive content comes from people being harmful for the very first time, with about 90% of those people deleting their tweet within a day. So here's one of the earliest versions we tested. At the time, the heading and subheading, language like this could lead to someone reporting your reply, but you could change it before sending. It was called out by some as being perhaps a bit too blunt in its gentle deployment of scolding. As you can see here, Chuck Wendig was none too happy, and he tweeted his displeasure, bleep that bleep. So we ran into other problems in our early tests as well. First, the algorithms we used to analyze potentially harmful tweets needed fine-tuning to address detection errors and inconsistencies. To start with, we found that ML didn't understand the nuance that occurs in many conversations. For example, it couldn't always differentiate between offensive replies, sarcasm, or even friendly banter. It also struggled to account for those situations in which historically excluded communities reclaim language and then use it in non-harmful ways. We did several more months of quantitative and qualitative research, iterating on the design as we went along. Finally, based on those learnings, we decided to move forward with this iteration, which we launched globally in May of 2021. So I want you to look at what's written here. Both the heading and the body are an invitation, which again shifts the responsibility to the reader. Super important to this version is the acknowledgement that we might get it wrong. So we've been training the models that detect potentially harmful or offensive replies for over a year, and we were seeing exceedingly few mistakes. Still, we always need to assume we'll make errors when we build experiences that rely exclusively on ML. Here's what else we learned. In qualitative research for this nudge, people told us that when we make a decision, it's vital that they feel heard throughout the process. This means giving them a voice, creating space for them to give us feedback and correct our mistakes. So we added a way for people to do just that with the linked text, did we get this wrong? That allows people to give us direct feedback about the nature of the perceived error. We also included an education half sheet to give context and transparency to our processes. Transparency is a pillar of procedural justice, which suggests that people are more willing to accept unfavorable outcomes when they've been part of a transparent process. So the results blew us away, with 31% of users either editing or deleting their tweet when given a chance via the nudge. So I'll read this data point just to hear it myself again. 31% of users edited or deleted their tweet when given a chance via the nudge. That's huge. But wait, there's more. Earlier this year, we wanted to know if we could do better. So we conducted another experiment on the language using social science theories for persuasive messaging. It turns out our existing copy, the control, was the poorest performing messaging approach. It yielded the smallest rate of cancel and edit actions, resulting in the highest rate of send actions. We were like, what? We thought we nailed it with want to review this before tweeting. But the descriptive norms theory was the winner. This theory suggests that people are motivated to behave similar to how they perceive others to be behaving, regardless of how we ought to behave or what is right. Descriptive norms are accepted behavior patterns or what others are doing, things like group identity and social proof. So using this theory for our new messaging, we made the following improvements. We increased nudge reply cancellation rate by over 19%, and we increased the nudge reply revision rate by over 11%. So when you consider the number of active daily users on our platform, these numbers are huge. And as with the misinfo label and the article nudge, finding the exact right word was a manual, laborious process. So now we needed a way to automate and enforce our guidelines at scale, a way to ensure consistency and cohesion over time as new teams create new nudges like this one, but on different surfaces and touch points. So words really do affect action, and we've got the receipts to prove it. As I said at the start of my presentation, we're fortunate at Twitter to have a world-class research and data science teams that help us gather qualitative and quantitative data to prove that thoughtfully selected words can and do create a positive behavior change. But again, how do we scale this? How can we flex our voice to invite, promote, and champion healthy conversations on a large scale? As you saw in the stories, every word matters when you're designing to change behavior. And again, it takes a lot of manual, labor-intensive, time-consuming effort to find those exact right words that produce the measurable impact we're after. So what this means is that tackling online harm on social media isn't just a matter of which rules we have and how good we are at enforcing them. How we design the platform, especially how we design the words we use to speak to people from within the platform, has a critical impact. At a global company like Twitter, we're not just culture, but technology, teams, and priorities are constantly in flux. We need a way to achieve those consistent brand standards, cohesive experiences, and meaningful outcomes at scale. So this is a task as daunting as it is necessary. And it seemed like an impossible task just a few years ago, when our primary tool was Google Docs and our processes were left up to individual content designers. And we approached every project as if it were the first. It all comes down to content governance and how we can achieve a singular, consistent brand voice at scale. So that brings us to the heart of our conversation, content AI. So let's get into it. In this last section, I'll get into the role of AI in Twitter's content design practice. And let me repeat this just to hammer it home. In the 3 stories I shared, finding the exact right words took a lot of time and effort. So we needed an automated way to enforce our brand guidelines, a way to ensure consistency and cohesion over time, so that whoever writes a copy for the next experience does not have to start from scratch. At Twitter, the content design team uses AI for natural language processing, or NLP. NLP refers to the branch of artificial intelligence concerned with giving computers the ability to understand text and spoken words in much the same way that people do. We use it to keep our writing on brand and enforce our guidelines across touch points to help ensure, again, it's about consistency, brand conformity at scale. As I said before, when you're doing product writing in a global company like Twitter, AI is about content governance. It's one way we can build on our successes rather than starting from scratch with each new project. It's important to note that the content design team doesn't use AI for natural language generation, or NLG. NLG is a branch of artificial intelligence that produces natural written or spoken language from structured and unstructured data. So AI isn't aware of our content formats. It doesn't know what surface we're on or what touch point we're writing for. And it's definitely not aware of the cultural zeitgeist. And it doesn't have the research insights to understand our product strategy, our business goals, or our user needs in the way that we do. There's just no data set that can help NLG produce our writing automatically. So for us, content AI comes down to enforcing good writing as we define it at Twitter. And this is definitely an AI problem. It's not a people problem. No matter how many content designers we hire, the problem doesn't go away. In fact, it actually becomes more significant. And it's actually a complex AI problem. Why? Well, because AI models that provide writing suggestions need to be correct and fast. And by correct, I mean the AI gives a suggestion that the writer accepts. So what this means for our content design team is that we need to continually train those AI models to provide better suggestions over time. So we do this by accepting or rejecting the suggestions as we write, and by tweaking the AI models as our content ecosystem evolves and we get feedback from our cross-functional partners. At Twitter, we use a tool called Writer for content AI. Writer isn't sponsoring this event and they're not paying me. There are other AI tools for content creators, but this is the one that we use at Twitter. So this image shows our primary use cases for content AI, which starts with enforcing Twitter's own editorial standards with custom inline suggestions or feedback as we write. One of the reasons we chose Writer over other AI platforms is that it works in the tools that we use every day, like Figma and Google Docs. And then we can publish those custom suggestions, AKA the content AI, within a traditional style guide. So what you see here is a Writer plugin for Figma. We all know that no one likes searching the style guide to validate they're meeting the latest style standards. With content AI, you get those style suggestions as you write. The AI provides two levels of suggestions, out of the box and custom. So the out of the box suggestions catch things like the typo that you see here on the far left screen. It's probably too small for you to read, but what it says is, we want you to be yourself to Twitter, instead of we want you to be yourself on Twitter. But it's the custom suggestions that are specific to our brand that really help us move faster, like the unique way we use punctuation, the branded words that we always capitalize or never capitalize, and the nuanced inclusivity guidelines. So here's where we create the custom rules the rules that offer those custom inline suggestions. You can think of these suggestions as Twitter's own version of Grammarly, with Twitter's style guidelines layered on top of writers' models for punctuation, writing style, clarity, delivery, and inclusive language. So with content AI helping to enforce our guidelines, we can have greater confidence that no matter who's doing the writing and no matter where people meet us on Twitter, they're going to meet the same Twitter. And speaking of inclusive language, we all know that AI can sometimes be inherently biased, like the detection errors and inconsistencies I told you about in the story of the harmful reply nudge. But Twitter's content design team actually uses AI to stay inclusive by leveraging the inclusivity model in Writer, and then by layering in our own models for inclusive terminology, punctuation, and plain language. So here's a Writer plugin for Figma again. Take a close look at the headline, which is in title case. But at Twitter, our style standard is sentence case. So the AI catches the error and suggests we change it. So again, now we can be more confident that what we ship is both error-free and meets our style standards. Writer's content AI also provides an intelligent term bank that gives us feedback as we write. So what you see here is a Writer UI for setting up individual terms, like misleading. Behind it is a Google Doc with an inline writing suggestion when the AI encountered a word we set up as a common mistake. In this case, the word disputed. If you remember, that's a term that performed really terribly, and we probably will never use that in the product. The words we choose when designing at Twitter are influenced by many factors, from mitigating legal risks to meeting accessibility standards, facilitating localization, and ensuring we're using the shortest words possible so they don't break the design. And we know that using these words inconsistently can weaken our brand. The problem is amplified by the growing amount of content we publish on various surfaces. So using content AI to help build a controlled vocabulary that ensures we only use approved terms and that we avoid terms we decided we'll never use or have identified as common mistakes. Again, this helps us convey that consistent brand voice and that we can do so at scale. It's about velocity and efficiency. So here's how the content AI returns a terminology suggestion within Figma. With those inline suggestions, we don't have to go find the style guide to check if we're on brand. Instead, we get real-time feedback, again, as we're writing. And now everyone who uses the AI knows that the term tweeting is capitalized everywhere and always. So content AI can't support all of our editorial needs. So we also use Writer to layer in other ways to automate and enforce our writing guidelines. First, we use Writer to store short phrases and paragraphs, what I call reusable text components, that we've tested extensively and we know work well, like the phrase, "Did we get this wrong?" which we always use in experiences that rely on ML. Even though most of us would likely avoid searching within a traditional style guide when the stakes are low and instead just go with our guts, Most of us would use it for reference when we know the stakes are high. So we also use Writer to publish a traditional style guide on our intranet. It's one of the most important self-help tools that we provide our cross-functional partners. So now we have a single source of truth for those custom inline suggestions, the AI, and for our traditional style guide. So things are just easier for us to maintain and for everyone to find and use. So what's next for us at Twitter with Content AI? Remember how I said we don't use Content AI to do the writing for us? That's true. We don't use it to do the product writing for us, but we think many of our cross-functional partners can use it to do their own writing, and we're testing it out with them now. For example, we have a small content design team at Twitter, certainly not big enough to help our many partners do things like write sample tweets for their prototypes or create the documentation for our design system. But Content AI in the form of NLG can do that in seconds flat. So as you see here, what you see here is a sample tweet the AI generated for a fictitious prototype. I entered the request, write a funny tweet about people who like pineapple on their pizza. Then I entered the context, make it clever and assertive. The AI generated a series of tweets, including this one. Pineapple on pizza is for people who can't make up their mind and just want their pizza to be a sweet mess. So here's a close-up of that AI generated tweet. I think it's pretty good. It'll certainly do for a prototype, but again, you can keep clicking generate and get more and more samples to choose from. And here's a sample support article that AI generated for a fictitious design system. For this article, I entered the title, When to Use a Popover Component for the Web, along with the section headings, Overview, When to Use It, and When Not to Use It. In seconds flat, the AI generated a complete article. So instead of facing down a blank page and having to write the article from scratch, in theory, the system designer would just likely need to fine-tune the flow. And here's a close-up of that AI-generated help article. As you can see here, the quality is fantastic. And if you look to the right of the screen, and it was the same way on the sample tweet, you'll also see that the AI provides our custom inline writing suggestions to ensure that the language meets our brand guidelines, including accessibility. So I wanted to show one last example while our content designers, one last example. While our content designers don't use AI to do the product writing for us, we're trying it out to see how successful it is in optimizing things we've already written, including simplifying, shortening, or polishing them. For example, here's a fictitious warning label that needs to be as short as possible. The component is just tiny. So I selected shorten and got some pretty impressive results. Here's a close-up of the AI-generated rewrite. The one that might actually work within our content ecosystem is, this tweet links to a misleading website about a crisis. It's 9 words, whereas the copy that I wrote, this tweet links to a website that has misleading information about a crisis, is 13 words. So I absolutely love this revision, and I'm having tons of fun playing with the functionality. But again, if I didn't happen to like any of these revisions, I could just keep generating more. So we made it to the end of the presentation, and I'll just wrap things up with a final thought. At Twitter, the content design team is becoming more and more important in supporting Twitter's values in ethical, respectful ways. We're connecting with people on the platform in new and innovative ways, affecting positive behavior change on a global scale, and helping support free speech and healthy conversations in a safe environment, all with the help of Content AI. It all comes down to content governance and how we can achieve a singular, consistent brand voice at scale. So I want to thank you for joining me today. I'll open things up for questions. We've got, how much time, Anya, do we have left? About 20 minutes? Oh yeah, a little, maybe 15 minutes?
Yeah,
But
almost
if you don't,
20 minutes.
great, yeah. So if you don't get your questions answered today, my DMs are open.
Thank you so much, Lisa. It's absolutely fascinating, and it's so cool to see what it looks like on the screen, the way you've integrated it into your
I'm so glad.
environment. Would you, could you describe writer.com as a kind of personalized Grammarly on steroids.
Yeah, that's exactly how I describe to people. It's like your own version of Grammarly. Instead of having their kind of their more generic suggestions, we get, we get the suggestions that we want, the ones that are really unique to Twitter. And that's a differentiated, that and the fact that Writer, and I'm sure there's other content AI platforms like it, but is incredibly secure, and it can pass an intense security review. Grammarly at this point can't do that. But again, there are other tools, but that's a benefit of going with something, a more sophisticated content AI tool, is you really get those suggestions that are specific to your brand.
Yeah. And just the idea of having the style guide recommendations right there on the screen as you work.
Yeah.
Yeah, great. So we have lots of questions here. Let's go through them. And we'll start from the top. Jovita says, I'm curious to know, I see the questions, did we get this wrong? With the answers yes and no being a bit confusing.
Yeah.
I wonder how the testing for getting the question right went.
Maybe, I'm not sure. I understand. Basically what happens, you can, when you click on that, you can select yes or no. And if you select yes, then you can put in, what you perceive the error to be. I'm not sure if that answers the question.
Yes, I'm not sure I understand exactly what Jovita is asking for. Maybe Jovita, do you, okay, and she's posted something in the chat. Okay, she wants to explain in more detail. I can allow you to speak, Jovita, if you want to. Let me see. Okay, Jovita, you should be able to speak now.
Oh, thank you. Thanks for the talk. So yeah, to clarify, I can't see the questions anymore. In that pop-up here to reread it again. But I think what you asked on Twitter was, did we get this wrong? And to me, it feels like I need to answer yes or no. But to me, like a more intuitive question to ask would be, did we get it right? Yes, you get it right. No, you didn't get it right. So I'm just curious, how did you go about testing that question? Whether more people. It seems that more people. It was clearer to more people when you asked, did we get this wrong, rather than did we get this right?
Yeah, if we got it right, then people don't really want to give feedback. They would want to give feedback if they felt like they were unjustly identified, that Twitter made a decision about them and it was incorrect. So that goes back to that theory of procedural justice, where it posits people are much more likely to go along with an outcome, including unfavorable, if they've been part of a transparent process. So yeah, if we got it right, people are just gonna either say, to heck with you, I'm gonna send it anyways, or they're gonna say, oh wow, let me rethink that. And they'll just go on and make their decision. It's really when people feel that something's been unjust that they're gonna want to let us know.
Wow, incredible. Well, thank you for clarifying. Really interesting.
Sure.
Thanks, Jovita. Okay, next one. Ramona says, what are some of the methods you use to get to the right words? Again, is the question clear to you, Lisa? What?
I think just getting the qualitative and quantitative. We'll do qualitative research, which can be moderated or unmoderated. We have a research team that will bring in people, and we're careful about what type of people we bring in, depending on what we're trying to learn. If we're concerned that people might, it might be something on politics, we'll make sure to have, liberals and people identify as liberals and conservatives, or if it could potentially be something with, age, or, so we'll get the right group of people in, and then we'll have a discussion guide, a research guide that, cross-functional team will contribute to ask the questions that we really want to understand the answers to. And then sometimes we do it unmoderated. There's a platform, it's called usertesting.com, but there's several platforms that you can do unmoderated. You know, the designer will create prototypes, we'll have a script, and then people, you know, can log on to the platform and they get, you know, a small amount of money to answer the questions. So that would be unmoderated. And then, of course, we have a data science team that looks at, you know, all the things on the platform and in terms of, you know, clicks and impressions and, you know, all the things that the data scientists would look at. And again, getting the best insight, you need both qualitative and quantitative. Again, it's a mistake to make an important decision based just on quantitative, because, you know, there's a lot of blind spots that can happen there. So ideally, you'll do a mixture of both.
Mhm. Yeah. Thank you, Lisa.
Yeah.
Next one, how did you validate all of the content in the 3 stories you shared? Was it A/B style or previously validated with users?
Again, it's a combination. Sometimes we do A/B for sure. On the nudges, the harmful reply nudge, we did quite a bit of A/B, A/B/C/D. You know, when we're doing that, we try to make sure the number of options that we put out there in the wild, you know, for people to interact with is appropriate for the size of the test market, right? Because we won't, you know, we'll test, maybe we'll test in certain markets, or we have different ways of slicing up what you know, how we test. So it's a combination of all those things. Another great way to get feedback as well is what we call like tweet sentiment analysis. Like, for example, on the article nudge, well, we got feedback really quickly from, you know, someone, the House Judiciary GOP tweeting, you know, that they felt unfairly targeted, right? So we're in a unique position where we have all these other ways that everyone else has to get feedback, but we can also just go to our platform and see what people are saying, which is an important part. And we have started doing what we call tweet out loud, where when we have designs in the early stage, we'll start putting things out there for people to start responding to early on, which is another great way to get feedback.
Great. Okay, more questions. A quick one here. How many people in the Twitter content design team?
Okay, we've got about 20. When I started almost 4 years ago, there was 2 people. I was the third. And then for a while I was one. I was the only one. But now we're a much more fully staffed team.
And is that specifically Twitter for Health or?
No, on the health team, excuse me, on the health team, there's 5 of us.
Oh, okay.
5, yeah.
20
Because
total.
again, in health, it just really does have that outsized impact, and there's a lot more education within health. There's a lot more nuance, because we're actually, you know, we're actually, you know, interacting with people in very often very fraught circumstances. For example, maybe they're doing a report because they've been dogpiled, or they're appealing action because they were unfairly, you know, actioned on. And, you know, so there's the writing in the health space, which is where I'm now, is actually the hardest work that I've ever done. And it is very I don't want to say stressful. It's because it's so impactful. It's very visible. Let's just say that's really visible. So when I started and I was the only one doing it, it was pretty lonely, you know, and you got to definitely feel exposed. But now that we have a much more full team, and we've got processes, you know, review, design reviews and crits, we have a lot more support, so that you're not, you know, just the one putting something out there.
Yeah.
Did I answer that question? I think I veered off on that one.
Yeah, no, definitely. Okay, next one. What do you think about, say, using GPT-3 to create written content for a digital tool? So again, writer.com is based on GPT-3, I think.
I don't know what that is. What is the term?
GPT-3.
I don't know. That's new to me. So
Yeah, okay.
I'll have to look that up.
And as far as I know, that's the kind of underlying technology for writer.com, and also for many other similar AI writing tools.
Okay.
And I think the question is, so I guess that relates to the you were talking about NLG, the natural language generation, rather than processing. So
Mhm.
I think her question is, what do you think about using such a tool to create written content for a digital tool? And again, I wonder then if she refers to the product writing in that tool.
Did you say NLG? I'm sorry, maybe are you saying the acronym NLG or what?
The acronym is GPT-3.
Oh, GPT-3. Yeah, I don't know what that is. So I'm
No.
sorry, I can't do that, but I will look at, in fact, I'm gonna make a note. GPT-3, I will find it out.
Maybe you, Vita, if you're still there, maybe you can confirm, did you mean using natural language generation to write for product writing for a digital tool?
Natural content generation, but not necessarily anything technical to write, like, you know, instructions, nothing like that, but very short descriptions. I'm particularly interested whether it affects SEO.
Well,
Like, you know, how the search engines look at that content. I'm curious.
Yeah, no, I have heard people say that search engines will rank it lower. They can somehow detect if it's I'm using the word NLG, natural language generation. Like at Twitter, it wouldn't, because we're not out trying to get SEO, like it's within the product. So it wouldn't, for us, it wouldn't affect SEO. So I guess it depends where you're going to use that writing, you know, where if it's going out on like a marketing website, perhaps it would. I can't answer that for sure. But I can say the quality is freaking astounding. I was blown away. I was really, really blown away. And again, I can't ever see us using it to generate the words for our product writing because it's just so nuanced and specific. But the rewrite functionality, you know, that I showed you, the shorten, polish, what's the other one? Simplify, and then there's enhance or something. We never want to enhance anything. We're always trying to get down to the bare bones, the fewest word possible. And it's super helpful, and I'm excited to play with that. And I think there's some real possibilities there. And sometimes, you know, you just are in your own head and you might not have a new idea. So it's sometimes fun to see what the NLG, natural language generation, comes up with. But mostly for us, you know, it is the NLP, the natural language processing, just brand standards. But within Twitter, I can tell you that there's going to be a lot of other teams that I think will really enjoy the NLG. You know, again, we're working with our design partners now to see what are their pain points. And the two things I showed were two things right off the top that they said they're not writers. They hate sitting there and trying to think up a tweet for a prototype, right? Or the design system. Those were two things that came right up. But I could see other uses, you know, support articles, you know, business emails. You'd be surprised how many emails people send to Twitter. I thought, oh, because I'm going to a place where there's no emails, it'll just be tweets, but there's plenty of emails on Twitter. A lot of business writing that I think that can, you know, that could potentially help for. We're also busy, like if there's something that can be done, so it leaves us time for more strategic, you know, thoughtful work. I'm all for it.
Yeah, that's really, really valuable insight from your session, I think, Lisa, then, because we tend to think of AI writing as doing the writing for us, but there are so many other things it can do, which at the moment at least is probably a lot more useful for us, instead of letting it loose.
I think that the work we're doing for I call it the term bank, you know, really this, we used to have the Twitter dictionary in a Google sheet, you know, when I started, and now that it's in Writer, it's become such a valuable tool. You know, we tag things with metadata, so both those snippets and our terms, it's all tagged with a metadata schema. It's a very simple one I've set up, but it allows people to, you know, search, like for example, in the health space, they can look for it. If you're looking for words that are accessible, we have a tag for accessible. So it's become a very, very important tool, you know, and then surfacing those words, especially words we don't use or they're used incorrectly. There's been just a ton of interest in that. And you can move a lot quicker, you know.
Yeah, we have a few more minutes, so let's try to squeeze.
Maybe one more question in.
The next one, I think you've touched upon it already. Do you envision AI being used for NLG for digital products in the future?
I could see it for sure. It depends where in the product, though. You know, like, well, for example, in a way, we're using the NLG for the rewrite functionality. But there could be other situations, maybe it's headlines, you know, within a product, you know, to get ideas for different headlines. But again, I can just say for Twitter, those words are so, they're chosen, you know, there's so many things that go in, like you'd have to have incredible data sets to be able to, you know, get you, does it know, is it a tooltip? Well, I don't know, the AI doesn't know if you're writing a tooltip or a, you know, or an empty state. You know, there's, again, there's, what is your business strategy? What's the cultural zeitgeist, you know, right? The article, that prompt for the sharing the article may not have been so, you know, caused such a scene if it had been a year later, right? So it really depends on that cultural context. So I think for product writing, it can, you know, potentially, you know, obviously help optimize things and generate some ideas, but it's different than just like a you know, a news article that's just going to go out and scan data sets and, you know, put a little something on your phone about the weather today, right? But I think we should all keep our eyes on it, and we should play with it and see what we can, you know, see what we can get to optimize the things that we're already doing.
Yeah, makes sense to me. 2 more minutes.
Okay, we can get another question. That was a short answer.
Last one. Where did I get to? Okay, how is Writer different from tools like Frontitude and Ditto? I don't know if you use Frontitude or Ditto. Yeah, so they're like Figma plugins.
Is Ditto the one that allows you to access the strings and yeah, that's a really cool tool. I met with the founder of that. She did a demo for me 6 or 8 months ago. I think actually I was telling the founder of Writer that Writer and Ditto should like sync up and have one Uber product. Writer does, I will say this, I didn't show it today because there wasn't time, but Writer does have an API into our Strings Center, which is our strings repo. So that AI I showed you that goes on the Figma doc, I mean the Figma or the Google Doc also can overlay the strings in our repo. So, and there's a functionality that allows us to edit, push to translation and into the product. So that ability to separate the product layer, the content layer from the app layer is incredibly powerful. But Ditto and Writer are different things at this point, although Writer has a bit of the Ditto functionality that I didn't share with you today.
Yeah, right. Okay. Yeah, that's a cool thought. Yeah, to combine the Figma management, copy management tools. Right. So we have reached the end, and so yeah, we can't get through all the questions, unfortunately. And
well, my DMs are open.
Pick up the conversation in other in other forums. It's yeah, a lot of interest around the topic, and so much to talk about. But yes, again, thank you so much, Lisa. This was
thank you for having me. It was an absolute pleasure, and thank you everyone for joining. I look forward to seeing you all on Twitter.
Super.
All righty. Y'all take care. Bye-bye.
See you. Bye-bye.